Hello there, this is Honest to Cloud. I am Eric Elliott, as always, and I'm here with my guest, Leighton Cobb. Um, you know, why don't you talk about how we know each other?
So it's pretty similar to the origin of Anders Theory. So the 757 Cartoon Comics Creators Club in the Muse Writers Center. We
Yeah,
definitely,
for people that don't know, that's in Norfolk, Virginia.
yeah, the Muse Writers Center in Norfolk, Virginia. Um, we basically would go there, and like yes, it's like a networking, like, oh, you make comics, I make comics, but it's also like, oh, you're a nerd, I'm a nerd, and so we end up just talking about, movies and TV shows and geeky stuff the whole time. So I mean,
Yeah,
it was a good community group that, like, it was maybe 6, 7 people tops, but it was like some of, my closest friends in the world, and like people that actually made me feel like I have community, you know, uh,
yeah,
here in Hampton Roads. So like, great group. Corey Bland is one of the guys who runs it and puts it together and everything. And
yeah.
he's our second issue of the comic. I couldn't do another comic without him. He's the best. So
Yeah, but Corey's a really, really good guy.
yeah.
Like I've hung out with him on multiple occasions. There was even a time where we did a very, very small Comic Con in like a school library one time, and he made sure I had like a little booth. I didn't even have like a comic ready. I don't think, or like me with trying to publish things on Amazon. I realized how asinine like the dimensions are for your comics. Like you have to
Yeah.
like keep sending it in because they'll tell you it didn't go through like a month and a half later. Before you
Yeah.
know it, a year goes by and nothing is actually up there. So I now started using. Um,
Yeah.
okay, but yeah, as I was saying, I went to Gumroad because it's far more easy to use, and if you get a sale, a lot more comes to you. It just doesn't have the audience that Amazon does because that's a conglomerate corporation.
Right.
So you gotta weigh your options because like when you're independent, like it's kind of wild west of like who you can get attention of. Like everyone,
Yeah.
their mama is like trying to like gain that community of people that like go keep reading your stuff. That's not like the same five people you can meet on Facebook.
Oh yeah, trust me, growing the audience has been something that I definitely like. It's a blessing and a curse, right? Because like, you're independent, so like, you're your own publisher and you're your own, marketing team. Like, you wear all the hats,
Yeah,
but at the same time, you also do all that work. So it's just like, you do get as much into it, or you get as much out of it as you put into it, but it really is, the same amount of work that you put into the comic is going to be going into selling the comic. So like,
mm.
it's two whole phases. So
I can speak from experience too. Like I write and draw my own comics as well. Um, but yeah, like has been a few series that I've been trying to get off the ground. I think a max of like four like official comics I've done. There was back when I was in high school, I did a comic that I just like me and my dad printed ourselves. It was not the greatest printing, and we didn't use appropriate paper because you could still see the bleeding on one page to another when you flipped
right.
it. Um, and part of that is because we used one color for everything, so like we ran through that color like almost immediately. But I've been redoing that comic. Hopefully, I'll get that done next year. Like I've been like I've been improving the story way more than it used to, and like I look back on some of how I used to write and what I thought was acceptable to do for art. It's like even just a decade ago, and it's intriguing, but it's also like partially embarrassing.
Right.
Like I'm like so much better now.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like are you a real creator if you don't hate some of your things that you make?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm dreading, because I was working on a comic called Drunk Mom before the pandemic, and then the pandemic kind of pushed us to collaborate on the Vondrous, and I'm like the script is probably going to need a ton of editing and like a second pass on it, and like it's just kind of daunting. I'm just like, I'll just do another issue of Vondrous there. I'm not going to worry about that right now.
So, from what you informed me about, is that you have one issue of a new series, and second series, you're like, make sure you get your Kickstarter, make sure that gets attention. Can you speak upon the story and the progress of that series in general?
Yeah. So Avondra's theory, I think first and foremost, it's important to know that um, it was born out of that 757 group where we just talk about movies all day.
Mhm.
So like we all liked Star Wars. So like that was probably the biggest influence that we just like totally wear on our sleeve, right? Like if
Yeah,
you at the cover, oh, I have a copy right here. Let me grab it real quick.
but yeah, like
If you look at
one thing about us, even though
and the main villain Emperor Mata, if you're not getting like mad Darth Vader vibes, like
yeah,
you're blind. So like like we obviously are like super influenced by Star Wars. So it's like a sci-fi thing where the main character Nico Avandros, who I guess you could say is like analogous to Luke Skywalker, he has like different versions of himself in every universe, and
mhm,
he kind of like sent adrift into the multiverse because of a time travel experiment gone wrong.
yeah,
Um, Emperor Mata's fleet shows up and explodes the facility with the time machine, and so it goes terribly wrong. But I mean, there's a Emperor Mata in every universe, so like even if he were to get revenge and track down his Emperor Mata and defeat him, I mean, there's just one lesson in the infinite universe, escape. So it's like an ongoing thing. We kind of meant it to be like an ongoing, like He-Man, Skeletor, like good versus evil, like 80s cartoon.
yeah,
Feel like, appropriate for kids, one, and then but each universe is its own continuity. So since it's an anthology, right? Like um, the the characters go on an adventure. They go through a portal. They're in a new universe, which is explained by the new art style, and then that universe has its own stuff going on. So as a writer, you basically just play with the toys and then give them to the next person. So the continuity is very easy, but also very hard at the same time because like I feel like I'm kind of like the lore keeper a little bit. I try to like make it make sense, even though it's an anthology. It's also like an ongoing, you know, continuing series. Um,
mhm.
so that sometimes the writing is just you have to kind of rein it in a little bit, and you're like, all right, well, how is this all connected? How is you know, like how is this entire universe uh, look like, right? Like um, the Allied Legion is like I guess the resistance or the rebels that you know have varying degrees of success throughout the multiverse fighting Emperor Mata and his empire. So um, yeah, like it's really fun to say like, all right, well, what would it's basically a what if or a Elseworlds. Like, what if the Empire defeated the rebels on the Battle of Endor or whatever, and like you just kind of go crazy with it, and that's one of the things I love about it is because it came from such a place of like just pure fandom and pure joy that I think it really shows how much fun we're having making the comic when you read it. Like that's probably the most important part is like it's made by Star Wars fans. You can tell it's super fun, and it's just a blast. That's
Well, to be fair, back in the day, Star Wars Publishing used to do Elseworld stories. We were just like, oh, what if the Empire had won here, and what if Leia became evil, or what if Yoda got visions of Darth Vader actually being Jake Lloyd Anakin? Like there was all kinds of things they would do in those stories. So the concept of doing that in just one uh, multi-laned continuity is very interesting, and I think more people are far more familiar with the multiverse in fiction in general.
Right.
I think for a long time, like people kind of just did it like at an arm's length distance, but there's so much been some exposure with Marvel movies. There's been Rick and Morty. There's been the Flash movie, like where they're constantly dealing
Yeah.
with alternate jumping timelines and all that. So it's always been an interesting concept to me. I haven't done a lot of writing where they're crossing over, but I do like doing ideas like, oh, here's a different universe, but it's still by me. Like,
Yeah.
not everything has to be in the same bubble together.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, that was maybe what kept people, like you said, at arm's length from comic books specifically, is like, oh, where do I start? Where do I jump in? Do I have to read every issue from Fantastic Four #1 to understand what's going on this week in Marvel? And it's like, no, dude, like, like you can jump in at any point. But it's hard to reassure people that, like, the story will have enough context for the new reader, right? But yeah, like Everything Everywhere All at Once was just it's not even a comic book movie. Like it's a multiverse movie. It's a sci-fi movie, but like it's just completely original. So yeah, like it's definitely entering the zeitgeist in a big way in the last couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool thing. Like because it wasn't that long ago where just the idea of someone being a sci-fi fan was like it was looked upon as lesser than, or it wasn't like it can never be in the context with the word cool ever. But that's been evolving over the past like 50 years dramatically.
Yeah.
Um,
Even D&D is like mainstream now. It was like Stranger Things and the D&D movie, and it's
yeah,
feel like more people are playing 5th edition than ever were playing 3.5, right? Like it's just kind
yeah, or
of
it was fairly recent where like people were actively embarrassed about admitting that they watch anime, and now like
yeah.
it seems like everyone in the mama is talking about how much they like My Hero Academia or
Yeah.
whatever new series is coming out. Like I'm like as long as the conversations are like civil and just people having fun, I don't have a problem. Like it's only an issue when like you get the toxic side and like people
Yeah.
really come out of
Exposed
the woodworks.
to any community. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, for practically any fandom, like that's an issue. Like as soon as it gets hits mainstream, or even before, like there's always the gatekeeping. There's always the shouting masters over things that makes no goddamn sense. It's
Our
like, yeah,
in
like
Star Wars.
maybe you could just chill. It's fiction. We're having fun here. Like we're gonna dress up, as an alien. Like, calm down. So obviously, Emperor Mata, you're talking about is very inspired by Vader, and like there's all kinds of sci-fi stories in the wake of Star Wars where like it's very intentionally like taking inspiration from Star Wars, like just like Star Wars did with Flash Gordon and
Right.
a bunch of different other series. It's interesting. Like George Lucas and his camp back in the 70s and 80s, like they weren't the first to do it, but like their impact is immeasurable. Like
Yeah.
there's gonna be like an analogy with hip hop. Like obviously Kanye is not the first one to do it, but he is
Yeah.
arguably the most important person. Like when you take him out, like so many things do not happen with other artists.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So, can you tell me about the main character? Like, we know a little bit about the villain. He's
Yeah.
armored dude in black suit, and he's bad guy in multiverses. But can you tell me about Doctor Nico?
First couple Nico variants that you meet. The main one, obviously, is the one. He's a son of 2 physicist parents, so um, they are barking up the specific tree, right? They want to developed this thing called the Aero suit, AERO, that is capable of protecting the wearer through the multiverse, right? So like they want to build something that they can navigate and traverse the multiverse safely, find new developments in science, medicine, philosophy, religion, you name it, technology, bring it back, or even like, spread some of that stuff for the good of mankind. Like that's kind of their idealistic version of what they want the experiment to do. What they don't know is that Emperor Mata has basically, like, he wants to dominate the multiverse. He doesn't want to allow people to do this, right? This is a giant threat.
He's a dictator.
Yeah, and he's not, the caliber of mind to be able to create this technology himself. So he has scrounged up some tech that can monitor for when things like this happen, and whenever they do, he shows up as quickly as he can to stop it. So at a young age, Nico's parents are killed when they're doing, an experiment with the Aero suit, and so he lives no longer on the planet Cosmos, but he's on a moon called K6 with his uncle Giuseppe, and who basically raises him. So he's also a bit of a scientist himself, if you will, and he's trying to develop a time machine for Nico to go back and save his parents from dying in the first place. And kind of like, I guess you can compare his dad to like a Galen Erso from Rogue One. He's working for the Allied Legion, the military operation that opposes Emperor Mata. So like he's not unaware of the risks that go along with doing what he's doing to try to aid, a certain political organization. Like I guess like in the clerk's conversation, like he's not blind to the risks of like being a contractor on the Death Star or whatever. Like he knows what he's doing. So, so his parents, fight for the Allied Legion. So Nico, I guess, has this, like dream of going to the academy type thing where he wants to serve the Allied Legion as well, like his parents. So that's where the main character Nico is at, is when he gets sent adrift in the multiverse, is like, I want to do good, I want to maybe carry on my parents' legacy. He knows about the Aero suit as a concept. He's just trying to carry on his parents' work, his parents' legacy, fighting Mata, fighting with the Allied Legion. So when he meets the second version of himself, Captain of Andros, this guy right here, he's an Allied Legion Ranger. So he's, a decorated, soldier in the resistance against Emperor Mata. And his world, which we'll explain in issue 2, in his world, the Allied Legion's been very successful and has basically snuffed out all of Emperor Mata's empire, and just he's basically like a terrorist at this point. Like he just kind of hides, and he does like they do like counter terrorism missions to like try to find him and take him out, finally getting rid of the empire once and for all type thing. But he's just kind of a looming force that he's still out there. And then the third Nico that they find is this guy named Nicodemo. So he's got a metal arm. He's got no shirt. Like he's obviously having a rough time. In his world, the Allied Legion loses the war. It's called the Prime War against Emperor Mata. His own world's destroyed. K6 is destroyed. The Allied Legion's destroyed. He basically just like loses an arm in the fight and like is able to scrounge up like a portal generator to get out of there. Like that's his story. Like he doesn't come from a good, good background. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and they all meet and they share stories and they all have their own trauma. There's a very like emotional element that I tried to add to issue 1 when they meet the characters from the drunk mom world, and they were like, "Whoa, what happened to you?" And like they just tell their story and they're like, "Dude, like have you taken a minute? Like, are you okay?" Like this sounds traumatic. Just to kind of like soak in that a little bit. But yeah, man, like there's 4 stories on the second issue. I'm writing the story for Manuel Carmona. I wrote his issue in issue 1, and then I'm writing a story in issue 2. It's a continuation of that one, and then mine kind of continues where they left off. They left the drunk mom world and we're walking onto this blue sandy planet with like a green sky and everything, and they are just wandering the desert at the start of this issue. So it's very like Tatooine, like, all right, what are C-3PO and R2-D2 going to find on this planet type narrative at the beginning there. So,
so I don't have so big familiarity with the
right.
story what you said. So, are you an artist or do you have like a team? What's going on?
Yeah. Again, it's a anthology. So, like example, like Brian Lacey's kind of a one-stop shop. Like on issue 1, he wrote, did the art, including like pencils, inks, colors, all that, and lettering. Like he did all of it. So that's his story is all him. Manuel's, I wrote it. He did the pencils, inks. He has a color artist, and then Micah Myers out of Portsmouth. He did the lettering for that. My stuff, I did the pencils, inks, colors, and then Micah lettered it. This time on issue 2, Brian's helping me out by doing some layouts, and I'm doing some flat colors for him. So we're just kind of playing to each other's strengths, I think, as a creative team and just collaborating a little bit better.
So this is mostly very like traditional of like how to make comics. But this is pencils, like literal ink and a
Yeah,
pen.
the process still exists for sure. And like I don't have a hybrid workflow. I do 100% digital. Like I do all my pencils and inks digitally, but Manuel and Brian, they do their pencils and inks traditionally on, the giant size comic creator paper.
Yeah,
Which,
talking about.
yeah, they're selling the inks on the Kickstarter if you're interested in like original art. But yeah, like it's interesting to see each other's processes because um, for the cover, Brian did the pencils and I did the inks and the colors, and so I kind of had to like format what he did physically digitally and then make it. Luckily, I was doing the ink, so I didn't really have to figure that out. But this time around, Manuel did the pencils, Brian did the inks. So I get these digital inks that I have to use. Like, I'm not touching them up or anything. This is the final product, and I have to make that work digitally, even though it was done physically. So it was kind of a learning curve, I think, for integrating our workflows. So yeah, it's been a really fun collaborative like challenge as well as like just a creative exercise in sci-fi and stuff. So
Okay, I got 2 very related questions.
yeah.
One is, how long do you expect the series run, and how far do you write ahead?
Okay, that's a good question. So when we had the first issue, we were kind of spitballing. I knew that like the story kind of was going to lend itself to at least a sequel, right? Like we're doing an anthology where the multiverse is endless, so you could, in theory, write a bajillion of these stories, and that's kind of what we
Who had the time for that?
yeah, we intended it to be that, but we also were putting the characters in like the Creative Commons or the public domain, so like anybody, if they're so inspired, can use these characters for whatever stories they want,
Oh,
make
okay.
money off them, as long as they like accredit the creators. Like we have,
And maybe like send you a script, just in case there's nothing,
oh,
you just like.
if somebody wants to write a Evandra story, I'll gladly like edit and be that, you know, Dave Filoni that will give you, you know, a whole speech about, you know, why a certain thing has to happen in a certain way or something like that for the universe. But yeah, it's our gift back to the comic community that's given us so much, right? You know, the stories that we grew up with that all inspired us, got us to those meetings, got us together talking about, you know, comics and movies and stuff. So
yeah, so this is less of a you know, Spider-Man, Superman. This is more like you know, a Snow White and Sherlock Holmes, where the rights are like kind of really very nebulous. It
yeah,
has a start point, but ultimately you're allowed to just do what you want with it for the
exactly.
most part.
Right. And that's our hope is like if we stop making Evandra stories at some point and you know, somebody else makes one, like we'd be excited to see what they do with it, what stories they have to tell. And we were talking about gatekeeping. I mean, you know, the fandoms are for everybody, and this property's for everybody too. So there's no wrong way to do it. If you're being yourself and you're making comics and being creative, you know, we 100% give you our endorsement, you know, to do that. So, how far do I write ahead? So, I left it open ended, like freaking J.J. Abrams, episode 7, and then kind of once I heard what the team was doing with issue 2, I had some ideas that I was kind of kicking down in my head, and I wanted to like kind of map out where I was going because it became obvious that you know, I had a idea of what I wanted the universe to look like, and I had like some. I keep throwing like Cosmos K6. I've drawn those planets maybe 2 or 3 times. Like that, they're not like heavily in the lore. It's kind of like Kashyyyk in the, you know, Wookiee lore, where like sure they didn't appear in the first 3 films, but like Lucas knew all about them, like in his head, right?
But it
Like
did appear in the holiday special.
right, like yeah, they had the stories before they had the screen time type thing, right? So I kind of have like, all right, I kind of want it to look like this, and at the same time I'm writing my own story for the next couple issues, so I do have it mapped out. I think I can get our story arc done in, I want to say 4 or 5 issues for the current storyline that I'm writing. And part of that is we wanted to do a crossover. That was also part of the initial concept. The working title of the first issue was Crisis on Indie Earths. So that's why they go to the Drunk Mom world. They cross over with my other indie comic. And so the idea was that we would all do that. Like we would cross them over with a public property that we create, you know, where they're able to play in that sandbox. And then at some point they would team up against Emperor Mata, right? So it'd be Brian Lacey's Just Star and Manuel Cremona's Project New Wave or something. Corey's doing a crossover in issue 2 with his Arya the Elf character that he did, like a jam comic with like me and Chris McCaffrey and a few others in the area. So it's going to be very fantasy. Like, what if Nico was a wizard or something? I guess is his prompt or idea or concept for issue 2. So yeah, I want to build off. I want to pay off that indie crossover concept first, and then kind of go from there. So I'd say 5 issues is the maximum that I'm willing to commit to right now in my life. You know, so
Yeah. Like one of my issues with doing comics is that I'm the one man man.
yeah,
Uh, so like I come up with ideas at the wazoo for series, and before I know it, I'm just like I have to 10 series ideas, and
Yep.
there's only like 3 that I actually do within like 5 years.
Yeah.
And all that comes out is like 5 issues. Like the workload is a lot when you're trying to do everything.
I feel
Uh, one thing they got learned.
I, in Drunk Mom, I have 12 of the issues scripts written. So yeah, the time to make all the art and do the Kickstarters, publish them and stuff like that's gonna take years for myself. Like I've just written a bunch of work for myself, and then I have a sequel to that called Drunk Moms that I want to do, and then a spin-off with Whole Rom, the kind of like Iron Man looking guy from the comic. I wanted it to be kind of like a space and not anthology, but like a space serial, like a sci-fi serial where he's just going through space and it's like Star Trek. Like he just kind of shows up, has a little adventure, and goes on his merry way. So all of that is in my head, ready to go. I just need to put in the work to do it. Like you said, you have a ton of ideas, and only a few come out. So
yeah, like any links that you have for Kickstarter, sub Kickstarters, or the comics you work on, send them to me, and I'll listen in the description. I'll leave them as a comment. That way, anyone that comes across this video can see it for themselves. Matter of fact, if anything that he has said, whether it's the Kickstarter or that I just mentioned, the comic themselves, you want to buy that, that supports them. And even if you just want to do fan art or do a fan comic and send it his way, like I'm pretty sure I'd be more than happy. Like anything to like get it more in people's attention and just spread the love and ideas just in general is a good thing.
yeah, for sure. Most active on Instagram if anybody wants to like tag me in anything. And then also if you happen to be listening to the video and like you check out the Kickstarter and the Kickstarter campaign is ended, you can also check out my website, clzeno.com. And there's a link in my Instagram to that. And I have a shop on there where you can buy presumably issue 1 and 2 at this point if you're watching the video. So
yeah, may I ask, like from the last time you checked, how close are you to your Kickstarter goal?
We were fully funded as of like 2 days ago. It's the now second week of the campaign. We hit our goal. And our first stretch goal is for there's a new character. She's a Allied Legion Ranger, just like Captain Evandris. Her name is Cami Valdez. So she goes and explores Uncle Giuseppe's laboratory on K6 with her Allied Legion team. After the explosion, so they're kind of going to see what's happened in the aftermath of the first issue. So she has a like Rosie the Riveter homage poster.
Okay.
Really cool. And the stretch goal, if we hit it, everybody who has a physical reward will also get a print of her as Rosie the Riveter shipped to them. So.
But before I move on, what we'll say is, some of the best stories coming out right now are from indie comic creators, the ones that don't have the big push of like your Marvel, your DC, or even your Dark Horse that like approach more people that do independent work. Like you just gotta find them. If you see one that you like, maybe it'll be him. That's a good idea. But just in general, like support them. Like it's just like begin more art in general, and that's always a great thing to bring more attention to. Now, you're on a Star Wars channel, so you gotta talk more Star Wars.
Down a lot of Star Wars. That's one of
Yeah,
the
it's nature of the beast. Like I'm sure we could talk forever about our indie comics. Like I didn't want to talk too much about mine because I didn't want to to take too much of your time about that. And,
I kept trying to tie into Star Wars.
yeah, I don't want to accidentally show you up. But can can you talk about how you got into Star Wars and like where you are in relation to the Star Wars franchise now?
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to think about when I first got into Star Wars. I was born in '94. And my uncle, who is definitely a huge inspiration for Uncle Giuseppe, he's like a huge uh, influence in my life. He's the biggest nerd I know, and I mean that in the most endearing way. Um, uh, he it took us to see like all the Harry Potter movies. I'm sure all the Star Wars movies. Got us super into it at a very young age. So I was already, deep into Star Wars fandom before the prequels came out. So
Yeah.
at 5, 6, I was obsessed with Star Wars because it's cool. Like if you're 5, Star Wars is one of the coolest things you could watch. It's PG. It's sci-fi. It's
Yeah. Are you special editions VHS generation?
Yes, yes, I burned the ever living crap out of some VHS. My favorite one as a kid was Empire Strikes Back. Was probably my favorite one. I wasn't super into Return of the Jedi at 6 years old. I didn't understand why it was great at the time, right? So,
Mm.
got very into Phantom Menace. I didn't really care about any of the flaws of the prequels at that age because I was as old as Anakin and I wanted to be a pod racer and blah 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 blah. Right? It was the coolest thing. So like I played a lot of the pod racing game on the N64. Ended up playing the Battlefront 2 game a lot on the PS2. Anything I could get my hands on. Star Wars. I was definitely committing a lot of time to it. I have a Star Wars tattoo. If you guys didn't know, um, it's the Silver Surfer is probably my favorite comic character, but in the space around him there are a bunch of Star Wars planets. So I've got Tatooine. I could not get a tattoo of Tatooine just because it's funny. Death Star 2, um, Coruscant, and Hoth are on. I don't know how to show it, but anyway, there's Hoth. So,
Thank you for the literal flexing.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm 97, and I grew up on the special edition VHSs. I did not see Phantom Menace in theaters because I was too young. Attack of the Clones is possibly the first movie I saw in theaters.
Wow. That's
Like I was real little. I remember like little bits of it from back then, but then again I was like 4, so like it's
yeah.
very hazy. um, but yeah, like um, just similar. Like my brain would not accept any criticism of those
Yeah.
movies. Like I was just like enamored with them. Obviously, with
Watch.
maturity and like seeing more films
Yeah.
afterwards, like I've grown up a lot more, and I love them with their flaws at the same time.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So too, like, we can talk about the romance and the writing and all that stuff, but like, I mean, the Battle of Geonosis, the droidicas and the battle droids, and all the
Mm.
Jedi, back to back fighting battle droid. Like, we loved that growing up. Like, it was, half the reason we watched the freaking Clone Wars was because we wanted to get more of that, right? Like, I had cousins who were a little bit younger than me, and they were watching the Clone Wars, and I was sure maybe 14, 15. What wasn't as cool to watch cartoons at that age, but I loved it. Like I was watching Clone Wars the whole time. Like I've never stopped watching Clone Wars. It's amazing.
Mm. Yeah. The only trilogy where like my brain could like fully comprehend everything I'm seeing, and I was there for the entire trilogy was the sequel trilogy. And like I already know like this a lot of very heated opinions about them.
Sure.
I'm very
Oh,
aware. But the first two I love, and the next one I love with major caveats.
right. Yeah.
uh,
Like
yeah, it's awkward one for me, the last one.
I think I had a moment So I was in the Navy for like 8 years. I had a moment where I met somebody, and they were, they're like, "Oh yeah, the Anakin and Padme story was like the most influential like relationship in a movie franchise for me growing up. Like Anakin and Padme were, my Romeo and Juliet." And I was like, "What the
Mhm.
heck?" Like at the time, I was very into hating on the prequels for whatever reason. But I kind of like I rewatched all the Star Wars movies in order to get ready for one of the sequel trilogy movies. And I was like, all right, well, I think where I'm landing now is like there's a Star Wars movie for everyone, right? Like you're not going to get the 6-year-old kid that was into pod racing into Andor. You're just not going to do it. Like Andor is not. It's it is like very corporate and very political. But I say that again in a fascinating way. Like
Yeah,
it's
like
for America
it's the most
compelling.
overtly anti-fascist Star Wars like live action there's ever been.
Yeah, but you are gonna get that 6-year-old kid into Baby Yoda. He's gonna love Baby Yoda.
Yeah,
So and they're gonna sell all the toys, and I hope they continue to,
yeah,
because at a certain level, there's a the majority of Star Wars, I'll say that is for kids. So like I don't want to sit here on my high horse and say, oh, I didn't like X, Y, and Z about this movie or whatever. It may not just have not been for me, and
you don't want to become an entitled curmudgeon.
yeah, and it's okay for something to not be for you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'd say Rebels was probably not where I fell off, but like where I was at a point in my life where I didn't watch it maybe as religiously as Clone Wars. Um,
Mhm.
I watched enough of it to know some of the main characters, some of the main storylines,
Yeah.
and have really enjoyed Ahsoka to the point where I want to go back and rewatch Rebels now. Um, and that's okay. Like if you rediscover Star Wars and your relationship with Star Wars changes over your life, that's okay too. You don't have to be, oh, I'm gonna watch the Empire Strikes Back VHS for the rest of my life and that's it. Like you can change and evolve. So,
But yeah, like even someone like me that is like talked about how like I'm always trying to be the most open as possible,
yeah,
like not be so standoffish about anything. Um, I still haven't gotten close to finishing the Resistance cartoon show. There's a lot of aspects of it I do like, but it's just something about it like it doesn't fully click with me.
yeah,
Um, like I just think it needs just like a little more drama. There's a little more stakes, and I'll be in it.
yeah.
But um, now you're an honest Claude. Do you have any idea what Claude is?
No, no, I have, I do not.
Okay. So in Rise of Skywalker, there's this tall yellow slug alien.
Okay,
It's in the Millennium Falcon early on in the movie where Poe, Finn, uh, and Chewbacca are using the Falcon to get away from Tie fighters. It's just a slug that just like looks into some sparks in the wall
it
and
was.
it shouts a little bit and then it like hugs somebody towards the end of the movie. Like it really doesn't do anything and somehow it's like a mechanic and a pilot despite having no arms. And I just thought, honest to Claude would be a funny name, a little pun that I can make
Yeah.
for this channel. So I stuck with it.
Oh man, yeah, that's my favorite thing about Star Wars. Have you seen that meme where it's like this whole structure and it's like all of Star Wars lore and then it's like the little peg at the bottom and it's like something a designer thought was cool in 1977 or whatever. Yeah, like
Yeah,
where like the universe has to be explained sometimes because it objectively doesn't make sense.
yeah. Like
I love it. My
I
favorite.
remember when people were freaking out that in Mandalorian season 1 we saw a Tie Fighter's wings like close like this, and people were like, "That's not how it works." I'm like, "That's the only way it can work. There's no way you're landing your ship on its wings tips. Like that's insane."
At a 90-degree angle. Yeah, like it's not happening. That's
like they took it to someone that actually knows how to design like a real ship. So someone that like studies like military wear, and it's like, well, that makes the best sense if it folds.
Yeah, yeah. I love also the the I wouldn't say uncreative, but the very practical names for things that Lucas came up with.
You mean like Elon Sleaze Bengano, the drug dealer?
Well,
He says Sleaze bag is his name.
for like in universe, like equipment and like parts, like
Yeah.
um, uh, hyperspace drive. Like it's very like function uh,
Yeah.
product. Like it's never like a weird name. It's like I'm gonna explain what the thing is in the name of the thing.
Yeah. And can we talk about how there's, just the alien race that look like, aquatic creatures and just called Mon Calamari?
Mon Calamari.
Yeah.
PR.
It's definitely campy.
Yes, in the best possible way.
Yeah. Um, Now, I started doing a segment with some of my guests, and this is where possible drama comes through.
Okay.
They get strapped in. This is my segment of like, what's your favorite, least favorite, and underrated. I,
Of
I,
the
I try to avoid the word hate, just like least favorite.
sure of the saga, like the main saga.
Saga, books if you read them, comics if you read them, and TV show.
Okay, I'll kind of put my comic aficionado hat on first, just to get that out of the way. Um, I will say I think my favorite Star Wars comic would be Dr. Aphra. If you haven't read it, if you're into Star
Okay.
Wars,
Yeah.
if you're into Star Wars comics and you happen to not be Dr. Aphra, I'm begging you, please read Dr. Aphra. All right, and then of the let's see, favorite movies.
So you're just going favorite, least favorite, and underrated? Is that how
Yeah,
you're?
I'm not gonna
Gonna,
do them for every genre or every medium or anything. I just wanted,
just making sure which order you're doing them in. That was it. You can go.
yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to Dr. Afro comic.
Yeah.
So I wrestled with it a long time whether I enjoyed Rogue One more than both original Star Wars and Empire, and that's a tough call, I think. But I think I'm open minded enough to say that I enjoyed Rogue One more than original Star Wars, and it really is hurting my inner child to say that I enjoyed it more than Empire.
Mhm.
I'll go ahead and say it, just to say that Rogue One's my favorite.
There you go. Be a little spicy.
And like
I like it.
sacrilegious or not, I think it deserves that you have this conversation. Like whether you enjoy it more than those two movies or not, the fact that we're talking about it shows how good it is. Um,
Mhm.
so I think I'll go ahead and just say it's my favorite, just to have a hot take that's not what everybody says that Empire's their favorite. Um, Least favorite.
As much as I enjoy Empire, I think like in some cases, I feel like some people feel like they have to say it in order to like fit in with certain Star Wars fans.
Don't have to say it. There's no
No, no,
rule.
no, I don't. But I
Yeah,
feel like a lot of Star Wars fans just like if I don't say it, like they won't like me. I have to say that as my answer
yeah.
sometimes.
There's been a lot of good Star Wars that's new, even beyond Rogue One with Mandalorian. I think
Mhm.
Mandalorian did a lot more for like, reaching a new audience than the sequel trilogy did, in my opinion. Um, and I mean, they've been basically all bangers the whole time. So like Ahsoka, Andor, like I've been loving the season 7 of Clone Wars that came out well after the first 6 seasons on Disney Plus was a masterpiece finale to Ahsoka's chapter in her life with Darth Vader, and seeing her fight Darth Maul was something I wanted as a kid growing up. So yeah,
Novel reader.
I have read a lot of novels growing up. I have not read many recently. I will say Empire is one I grew up reading. I don't really consider myself like a an authority on the Star Wars book. So what's your favorite Star Wars book or book series?
Mm, probably Leia, Princess of Alderaan. It's like a canon book, but I think it's like really emotional and really well done.
Nice.
It's like Leia in her like teen years. Um, so, do you have least favorite underrateds in these categories?
Yeah, I think favorite Star Wars game. Again, I it's not that I want to have a different opinion to be contrarian or anything, but like if people are like, oh, dude, Battlefront 2, best Star Wars game, like, oh, okay, dude, like we've heard that from most of our friends our whole lives or whatever, that we all really enjoyed that game. I'm gonna say Lego Star Wars. I enjoyed the hell out of growing up.
Are you talking about the one from when we were kids? Or are you talking about the Skywalker saga?
The Skywalker saga does a great job of revisiting those. So I think it deserves some good attention if you haven't played the new one. But yeah, I loved Lego Star Wars. Walks through episodes 4, 5, and 6. I think the second one went through the prequels. So um, I'll give it to those for like doing the. It may have been the first like one that did like a scene by scene Lego remake of some of the movies that the games were about
Yeah.
in a very successful way. As I know they went on to do that with like the Marvel game, Lego games and stuff. And like that one had like the first like voice acting, I think, in the Lego games. Anyway, huge.
At least they stopped doing the weird like split screen that starts turning. At least they stopped
Yeah,
doing that.
that was
That
pretty.
was ridiculous.
Even Lego Star Wars 3 with like the Clone Wars was my jam back in the day. So like all the Lego Star Wars series is probably my favorite video game. Just because it's fun. Like you're playing with Legos.
Yeah,
That's the fun of it, right? And
and they have a lot of good jokes in the game.
yeah. The dance parties where R2D2 is just doing this and this disco balls and stuff. Like I mean, like is it the most serious game? Is it a
No,
masterpiece
no.
writing? No, and it's not supposed to be. It's a game. It's fun, right? And I have
Mhm.
playing that. Um, so um, let's see. Least favorite, even though I don't want to really feed that part of myself, the dark side. I'm gonna
You can just like if it's not least favorite, you can just say one that you were like really vibing with.
more really into. I am gonna have to give the sequel trilogy a rewatch recently. I was a huge fan of The Last Jedi leaving the theater, uh, and legitimately was surprised when I got to work and all my friends were talking about how much they hated it. I would like my heart had a huge javelin into it. I was like, what are
Yeah.
you talking about? Beautiful film. Loved it. And if I want to break apart the problems with Rise of Skywalker, I think those go back to Force Awakens more so than they do Last Jedi, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But I'm going to leave that entire conversation, which is ever present on the internet, to rest and just the episode 2.
I mean, if you decide, you know what, I'm just gonna leave it as that, and I'm just gonna set it there, have people have the conversation themselves.
They're already doing it.
Sometimes you don't want to get in the weeds too much because it's too exhausting.
Yeah, and I think Solo's another one that people come up as like one of their least favorites or one they didn't get into. I'd say more so accurately, but I think I enjoyed Solo enough to say that Episode 2 is still probably my least favorite Star Wars film.
Yeah, I feel like that's where a lot of people land unless they are just like really, really big fans of that movie.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's a few of them out there, but I
I'm not
feel like a
yeah,
lot of people are just like they can't do the I don't like sound. They can't do it, and I can't blame them.
yeah, I'm not trying to yuck your yum. I know it's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, even though it's the first one I saw in theaters, it's uh, nowhere near my favorite, not even close. But there are aspects I do appreciate about all of them, like in general. Like there's even the holiday special has things in it that I think are cool. Like I mostly like the cartoon they have in there, even though it's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Like, as I've said before, Harrison Ford's face looks like a shovel in that cartoon. uh,
Yeah. I think least favorite of like the new shows, like I think the new Disney content has been really good. I think Book of Boba Fett has kind of the one that didn't fall flat on its face. I don't think like people give um the Robert Rodriguez episode where the guy does like a spin move before he shoots a lot of flack online, but like the series is overall pretty good. But I think of the new stuff, it was probably the weakest in my opinion.
like I think that show has like the first two episodes are really good.
Yep.
Episode 4 that's surrounding Mandalorian, I think, has one of his best moments
Yes.
for Mandalorian. And I think the finale is like actually pretty
Great.
badass.
I liked the finale a lot.
But like I'm not someone that got upset about the mods. I know there's some people that like lost their like they basically had a conniption over the mods. I'm like, they're cool, whatever.
Like the floating like Vespas or whatever.
Yeah. It's very like no, I mean George what was it? He did American Graffiti, like that fits right in the DNA with
Right.
that movie.
And it's evident, like if you're complaining about mods and Vespas in space, look at Dex's Diner, a 1950s American style diner in
You want a cup of Java juice?
long time ago, far away. Explain
Yeah.
these diners in space. Okay, well, it's a stylish choice. Like it's camp. It's silly.
Yeah. It's taking archetypes of film and real life. Just George in writers and creators after him, just like putting different elements together. Like on one side, video trilogy is like a almost Arthurian like face tale, but then at other points it's a samurai movie, and at other points it's like a war documentary. It combines all of those
Yeah.
to make it. Klaud, the character, he's a Glep Shido. Glep
Okay.
Shido is a Star Wars character that usually doesn't do much at all in the movies or television. Sometimes just kind of there.
Right.
I'll consider anything from a background character that has like a half a second screen time, everything to like Chris Nadine and his fake beard. I think everything in between there is like prime Glep Shido.
Yeah.
I think some characters grow out of being Glep Shido because they get way more attention, like Kit Fisto in the original trilogy, like basically does nothing, but we see him a lot in the Clone Wars micro series and in the 3D animated cartoon, where I'm like, okay, he's not anymore. Like he has way more screen time, where people can see it.
Of those like background characters was a pod racer named Dud Bolt.
I know Dud Bolt. I love his name.
Yeah, his name being Dud Bolt. He looks like a freaking platypus / warthog. I love him. I have all the toys of Dud Bolt. I played as Dud Bolt a lot in the pod racing game. He's my favorite of those like dumb background characters.
Yeah, you might be the biggest Dud Bolt stan. That is very possible.
I'll throw my hat in the ring. I'll put my name in the goblet of fire for biggest Dud Bolt fan. Sure.
Okay. Before we get to the Glep Shido, which I do every episode of the episode, I thought you would like to hear about some things I tend to bring up a lot on this channel.
Okay.
I don't know your familiarity with my channel. I make a lot of jokes and a lot of references to Luke clearly wanting to smash his sister.
He wants what? To marry his.
He did smash his sister.
Yeah.
Like, even in the comics before they revealed that they were related, they're kissing a lot in the Legends books in the comics.
Yeah.
And then Leia says, "Somehow I've always known."
Yeah, I mean, blame solely on George. I mean that
Yeah,
whole story line, if you can call it that, that whole ship or whatever in the original trilogy was kind of something where we all just kind of like put it in like our peripheral while we're thinking those movies.
yeah.
It's just like I love the original trilogy. What about the incest? Oh, okay. Well, I don't love that, but I'm not thinking about that right now. It's out of sight, it's out of mind, right? Like we all kind of don't really talk about it.
Hey, someone that was on a guest on my channel, Nick, he is also part of a different podcast called SSW Network. Check him out. Not saying you specifically, just the audience.
Okay.
But he said that George was ahead of his time. If you look what's the top categories on the hub.
I mean, that's valid. If you want to make a plot for a future, uh, Axel whatever parody of your property, that's a great way to do it, George.
Yeah. It's and if you want to look at some of the very interesting cultured anime, they also have that as a theme. Another thing I bring up on this channel a lot is I have a Star Wars conspiracy theory.
Okay.
Okay, so have you seen The Bad Batch?
Yes, love Bad Batch. One of the other examples of the modern Disney Plus stuff that I absolutely love. Yes.
Okay. Do you remember there was the episode where they fend off a Zilla beast and then Mount Tantus takes the beast away? It's like
Yes.
absorbing electricity and all that. My conspiracy poses okay. Mount Tantus is the same organization that is a part of the revitalization slash cloning of Emperor Palpatine. We
Right.
see Rise Skywalker.
Okay.
And we know that Rey is genetically related to Palpatine reanimated. So my conspiracy says, well, we see that Palpatine is able to absorb electricity in Rise of Skywalker, and he becomes younger, more powerful. So was he genetically modified with Zillo Beast DNA?
Valid. I think that's a good theory. It's not the best or worst I've heard. I think electricity is a weird one in the Force, like Arcana lore, to where like other characters have made electricity and repelled and like manipulated electricity. The big one I'm thinking of is
Dooku Yoda.
Yoda, yeah. And that was episode 2, right? So I don't know if that's exclusive to the dark side of the Force. I think it's
I mean,
fairly,
Rey shoots it, Rise of Skywalker,
yeah.
and
And
she had him falling in that movie.
I don't know how much of Lightning specifically is Palpatine genetics, Rey, or
I think it's more about you're tapping into rage.
right.
Like I don't think you have to be like I'm rooting for the bad guy.
That's what I got from it too. Is like the whole conversation of like, is the dark side more powerful? And it's like, okay, well, there are cool things you can do with the dark side of the Force. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but as Yoda says, it's not more powerful. It's just easier, more seductive.
Right. And so
But
that's
one reason,
I enjoy that level of ambiguity to where we can have fun conspiracy theories about it.
so I mentioned how Rey is genetically related to Palpatine. So that if this theory is true, that means that Rey is part Zilla Beast.
Okay.
And
Try that for a dollar, I guess.
I've expanded on this conspiracy by pointing out things that happen in the sequel trilogy. One is in Last Jedi, she gets a really bad burn on her arm. In the next movie, it's non-existent. So I'm like, seems like something a lizard would do, but it's healing.
There's a scene where she like chops her own arm off and grows a new one.
Yeah. Or she has to like bathe in light on a rock.
Shed her skin. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be a weird direction for Rey to go. But
in the same movie, she calms a giant snake. So I said, lizard recognize lizard. And in the same movie, we see that she has a vision of an evil version of herself, and the
Right.
evil version of herself has sharp teeth.
Okay. You've
uh,
got the roots of something real, and you're latching onto them. And I encourage your creativity. I say go for it. If you want to develop the Rey as a lizard person Star Wars conspiracy theory, I mean, more power to you, man.
yeah. It's like I do appearances on SSW Network, and I'm like there almost every Friday, like speaking on it, and that's like the one big thing I'm known for is me talking about that. It's like a reoccurring joke.
Guy, but it's like, yeah.
I've developed another conspiracy. I do not believe this one. I just thought it was funny. Just sometimes you want to have fun. It's like, I
Yeah.
wonder if anyone's going to take the bait. Is anyone going to say, you know what, you're right, Eric? I'm just like, you goober. This conspiracy says that Mutt from Indiana Jones is Snoke.
So funny thing with Snoke, before Rise of Skywalker came out,
Yeah.
I wrote like a fan fiction about me. It was basically the movie like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, but with me and my buddy Ryan. And so we were like so excited for episode 9 that we broke into this is the story, like in the fan fiction. We broke into Skywalker Ranch
Oh, wait,
to
this is like fanboys.
yeah, for sure. To where like we wanted to see the movie before the movie came out, and we were like, what is this? And Dak from Empire,
Yeah, the one who dies.
Snowspeeder, gets stomped on. He is the reason for Snoke getting killed, right? Like real world Dak manipulates George Lucas, like blackmails him and like threatens him and stuff to pushing the sequel trilogy in that direction so that he can have his like people forgot about the worst character death. Like,
So this was in George Lucas's clause for the acquisition. It's like Snoke must die in the name of Dak.
he's got to get killed so tragically and so abruptly that people forget all about Dak, and that takes the limelight off of him so that he can kind of fade like right off into the sunset and not just be a joke. That was and then my other favorite conspiracy theory, I guess, it's all in good fun. It's not even in universe, but do you know the H2O just add water meme? It's a show where they're like
the mermaids.
Yeah, the mermaids,
the Australian mermaids,
like the Arnar, the the people, either the people that made that show did the same thing to George Lucas, or George Lucas is such a big fan of that show that Omega from Bad Batch is an homage, in fact, to the characters on H2O.
Claire. Yeah, I was not expecting. Out of references I was going to get on my channel, H2O Just Add Water was not on my list, but I'm happy that it happened.
Yeah, I mean, say Arnar in the next season of Bad Batch, and I'll be the happiest person in the entire world.
But anyway, the Mutt Snoke conspiracy says, okay, in King of the Crystal Skull, they just kind of like leave Peru after seeing just interdimensional beings just leave, which I'm just like, and they're just like, well, that was that, and I'm just like, no one's gonna go back, no one's gonna check.
Yeah,
Mutt seems like a character that would go back and check.
Do you know? Do you happen to know how involved Lucas was with Crystal Skull in terms of writing?
Well, he was one of the writers. It was him and another guy.
Okay, because I know with episode 3, like he had another writer on the project, right? It wasn't just him doing the script after episode 2. So I didn't know if that was just full blown Lucas or not. So.
Um, well, Steven Spielberg would only agree to it if they don't use the word aliens.
All right. I mean,
yeah, but yeah, all directing is still him. They're both doing producing, and I'm sure there's a lot of like non-script notes of like ideas they did on the spot that Spielberg was a part of, because he tends to be pretty hands-on with any project he works on.
Yeah.
Um,
not the
but,
worst. Not.
hmm?
I don't even hate the idea of taking a character as pulpy and campy as Indiana Jones and having him find aliens. I don't hate that idea. The movie itself was actually pretty poorly. So
I mean, yeah, I would say half the movie is like awesome. Half the movie is like, why'd you do that? That's how I feel about it.
Through some vines, not what I need in that movie. I'll say that.
But something tells me that Mutt would have gone back and taken like a chunk of like wall that has like interdimensional creature art on it. And either he gets abducted there or he gets abducted while he's serving in Vietnam. And
okay,
the conspiracy says that he was experimented on to look more like them, so that makes him all gray and lanky, big head. They put an implant into his brain, they scar his head so they can tap into his anger of not having that good father figure that he wanted this whole time. And he will live vicariously through Kylo Ren, saying, "Your dad just looks like my dad, and I want him to be dead."
That's such a deep cut, like far-fetched conspiracy theory.
Yeah, he'll still become the template for more pickled Snokes. Don't worry.
You lost. So like, I'm not. I don't think it's far-fetched to say that like the tech in Kingdom of Crystal Skull that was left behind by the aliens is like interdimensional. Like I think that's a pretty astute observation. But to then say that the next logical step is to tie that character to Snoke because George Lucas is involved in both franchises is like the long.
And that's why I don't believe this. But I just thought, this is too funny.
It is very.
Like I've had other guests saying like, I just want Snoke to call Emperor Daddy-O and like pretend like he's combing his hair by putting a comb in like Pepsi. And I'm in agreement with another guest saying that, if you were to make a clay model of Harrison Ford and like fell onto the carpet just dramatically, it would kind of look like Snoke.
I mean, of the likenesses, I would say, yeah, him or the client, maybe like the old guy.
Werner Herzog.
Yeah, if you're like a real big Lucas hater, I mean, you might say something like, "Oh, he looks like Jabba." Like, that's not accurate, but yeah, that's not bad. You're barking on free. I don't know if you have something here, but I like your enthusiasm.
So, is there any questions you have for me, or anything you want to say to the audience before we move on to Glup Shadow?
Yeah, let's see. The Owen Wilson impersonator, if you haven't seen him, is this guy that's like, here's Owen Wilson doing Obi-Wan Kenobi. Pretty funny. I'll send you the link, put it in the show notes, but there's one where he's got like 3 or 4 of them, but there's one where he's like, "Hey man, Han, I need you to stop trash talking the Force when I'm trying to teach Luke over here. I mean, you got a lot of swagger. That's why we like you." but like it's very stupid, very very silly. I do those. Those are funny.
Is that it? Just Owen Wilson impersonations.
Yeah.
Okay. The Glove Shadow. You have seen this character, but
Yeah.
you probably didn't even notice
Okay.
this character exists. You ever heard of Maxaron Aguilera?
Axelrod. That sounds
Maxaron Aguilera.
that sounds familiar to like when I was just researching random Star Wars characters, but I can't place it. Where are they from?
This character is from Naboo.
Okay.
So this is what the character looks like in movie. It's not a very good shot. They are washed out in like so much shadow.
Right.
But here's another perspective on this character.
Okay.
Is this ringing bells for you, or you want me to explain?
That seems vaguely familiar, yes, but you can provide any context. I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Maxaron was a Pontifex of the Brotherhood of Cobb Visits.
Okay.
He was one of 20 hermits of the Old Faith on Naboo and was the first Pontifex to legitimize a wedding in 300 years.
That's interesting.
The wedding of Anakin and Padme.
That's the guy?
Yes, this is the guy. His first appearance technically was not in the movie. It was in a novelization that came out before the movie came out. And he is named after Manuel Angra Garcia, a bishop from the book by Dan Brown, The Da Vinci Code.
Okay. That's a cool history there.
So he's a priest type character. And side note, the title Da Vinci Code technically doesn't make any sense because it just means of Vinci because Leonardo is the dude's name.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, you just got this guy who's probably around 60, priest, just a hermit living in Boo, and he just got these two young people come up to him and say, "Hey, can you wed us while our droids watch?" And he's like, "Okay."
Sure.
That's basically what seems like happens in Attack of the Clones. He's just there. He just kind of walks away. You can barely see him in how much light is against the back of his head. Yeah, this is 1,000% a Glove Shadow. Like, who cares about this guy? But it's something about him that is alluring almost.
There's a story there. Like, either that encounter happened, hey, random guy, will you wed us? Like, or he's got like a deep connection to Padme's family or something.
Yeah.
No idea. Like there's a whole, like Legends universe or whatever that's like unwritten, all the side characters, backgrounds, character stories. So that's definitely an interesting one. He's got great.
Yeah, there's a chance that George Lucas didn't name this character at all.
Really?
Because this character wasn't given a name until 2007, like well after the movie came out and like on the StarWars.com. So I think this is the occasion where maybe Pablo Hidalgo, who worked even before Disney or someone like next to him, came up with this name.
Okay.
So that's my best guess. How do you feel about this man? You want another good look at his his work?
I mean, he looks like an upstanding guy. I mean, like if any priest is gonna look the part, I mean, they knocked it out of the park for sure.
We need the most Italian priest-looking guy you can get.
Yeah, on the head. I mean, there's a lot of like we were talking about, like real world influences and stuff. So yeah, if you're Roman Catholic influence in your Star Wars priests is part of your universe, George, I mean, you're doing good.
Yeah, I mean, they get married at the same place where they kiss, and that's Lake Como.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I mean, out of planets you would want to hang out on. I feel like
Naboo's,
if it's not Naboo, you're cheating yourself. Like this is like
yeah,
one of the most beautiful places. Period.
I love Naboo. Yeah.
Um, so,
Naboo
any
definitely.
last thoughts on this character or this channel, or a plug possibly?
Um, well, some last thoughts about that character. I would hope that he would publicly condemn Jar Jar um, in the events of Episode 3. That would be like, because like the political wing and the religious wing sometimes are different, or like they'll be intertwined to varying extents, right?
I mean, he gave emergency powers
Right,
to the Emperor and attack the clones,
right,
but obviously that didn't come to real fruition. But people are like, oh, this is bad because they're killing off everybody
right.
until
If there's
Revenge of the Sith.
and I hope that this guy would condemn Representative Binks. That's what I'll say.
But at the same time, he's not getting context. Like Jar Jar doesn't know what he's doing. He has no idea. Like there was no malice in his decision. He's like, well, seems like a good idea.
Yeah, that's why he's unfit to lead. But I mean, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, Jar Jar will end up as a homeless clown in the canon, if you weren't aware.
That's a fitting punishment, in my opinion.
Yeah, but at least he like gets to hang out with kids, and he has a protege. So
I mean, guys,
it's silver lining in this situation.
yeah, Jar Jar's best for kids. So we'll leave it at that. Yeah, if you can forgive my moving in Star Wars shelf to where it's literally just boxes behind me there as a viewer, and give me some grace. There's a lot of cool Star Wars stuff over there, I assure you. And check out the Evandris Theory #2 on Kickstarter. The link should be in the show notes. I'm sending it to Eric. Yeah, if you're big into sci-fi, I mean, please give us a check out. Again, if you're watching this after the campaign is over, I think it ends November 4th. Check out my website where you can grab issue 1 and issue 2 of the Evandris Theory, a sci-fi multiverse anthology comic from a bunch of creators out of here in Hampton Roads, Virginia.
Yeah. Well, I will say thank you for appearing, being on the channel, someone to talk to, and just catching up in general because
Yeah,
it's been a couple years since we've seen each other. Yeah, I
yeah,
got a beard now.
yeah. I got long hair. I'm out of the Navy. I got a beard, everything. Yeah, man. Well, I'll definitely make sure it's not a couple years before checking it again for sure.
Well,
Star
stay
Wars.
safe out there. I hope to talk to you soon.